Okay, welcome back to the show, episode 568 of the podcast. Welcome to BD4. I'm your host, RJ Carbone, and we're getting into the Knicks again today, and we're going to talk about this season, which actually starts tonight. I know this episode, I was supposed to release it. Well, I was supposed to release it last week. I've been busy. Then I recorded it last night. It was a bad recording. It didn't even come out at a good quality because I screwed up with the software, but we're recording it again this morning, the morning of opening night, if that makes sense, for the Knicks. They open up their season later tonight against the Boston Celtics, so we're just going to do a little quick season preview in this episode today, episode 568 of BD4. Welcome to the podcast. Let's get into it. Welcome to BD4. An RJ Carbone podcast. BD4, where there is no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, MMA on occasion. BD4 is a 5-star show on Apple Podcasts, also available in video format on YouTube and Spotify. So thanks for stopping by, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Champion of the world, turning, looking, see ya! Anthony for three, bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied! Time!
Penetrates, creates, and showing some dexterity as well with the left hand.
Yankees win!
All right, welcome to the show. Welcome back. Thank you for stopping by. Episode 568 of BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA, Yanks every series, Knicks every game, MMA on occasion. I'm your host, RJ. We're diving right in. So we're going to hit a few talking points, concerns, excitements, questions heading into the season, which again starts tonight, the 25th of October, for the New York Knicks. So one of the first things I want to hit on here is just make sure we're all, and if you're watching the YouTube edit and the video starts lagging and it doesn't seem like the frame rate's any good, I'm sorry. Something's going on with my shit today recently. But if you're, this is a podcast anyway, so if you're listening to the audio, no problem. 1 second. Put my phone on silence. I want to talk about the offense first and foremost because, one of my biggest questions is the sustainability of the Knicks offense. And, last year they were a top 3 offense in the regular season. They were great. It was much better than what I expected. I don't know that I expect them to do the same thing this year. I do expect some regression offensively, but I still think they have plenty enough talent to where they can still be an above average offense, probably top 10. My biggest concern about the offense is, again, it's just the sustainability of it down the line. Can this offense succeed in the playoffs? They are very ISO heavy. They run isolation offense in the half court. And you can criticize Thibodeau for that all you want. It's also a personnel thing, right? I mean, the Knicks' 2 best scorers are ISO scorers. Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle. That's how they score their buckets. The Knicks, they have a read and react offense. They run pick and roll. They get the switch onto the favorable matchup. They exploit the mismatch on ISO. That's how they do it. That's how Brunson was one of the only Knicks to score for that team in the playoffs last year because they got multiple switches. In the Cavs series, you saw in the Miami Heat series, switching Butler off of Brunson in pick and roll. That's how they get their offense. I would like to see a little bit more ball movement, a little bit more off-ball movement. You know, they don't need to become Denver, Golden State, overnight, Boston, Miami. Like, they don't need to become a team who looks like the Harlem Globetrotters. I just need a little more of that. I need some off-ball screening, some cuts. I would like to see Grimes coming off pin downs. I would like to see us using Randle off ball, getting him downhill and pick and roll. I would like for us to use Isaiah Hartenstein the way we used him in the second half last year, the entire year, as this high post playmaking hub where he's finding cutters on the baseline. Part of that is making quicker decisions on the ball. And, a culprit there is Julius. Randle has to work on passing out of doubles, making quick reads on help that's coming from the weak side. So, that will lead to a lower turnover rate, more efficiency from Randle, and just quicker play, even just in the half court. I'm not even talking about running a full court game all the time. But sometimes you just want to speed up your half court play. And a third concern of mine, just the weak three-point shooting on this team. The Knicks were 19th in three-point percentage last year. They don't really have a ton of guys for three-point shooting. 1 second. I've been an advocate for the Knicks finding a stretch five. But I feel like at this point, we don't really need any more lateral moves. So if taking fives who can shoot a little bit, Joel Embiid is probably the answer. Because that also gets you your superstar. But, I think I don't want to waste any assets on any more like above average talent. And no Towns either, for fuck's sake. But, I think the shooting needs to come from the wings. It needs to come at guard. Because you look at that, you look at those positions. How many guys on the Knicks are a lock, or close to being a lock to shoot above average from three? How many guys can you really staple in and say he's going to be a good to great three-point shooter? Grimes? Probably. Brunson, probably. Quickley, probably. And let's say DiVincenzo, probably. That's, what did we list? 4 guys? Average to above average from three. And then you look at the other side of it. How many guys are probably not going to be that good from three? How many guys are going to be below average from three on this team? Well, obviously your 3 bigs, because the Knicks don't have a stretch. Mitch, Sims, Hartenstein, and then you go to your wings. Hart, RJ, Deuce. You go to Randle. Is that 6, 7 guys I just listed? 7 guys who are probably not going to shoot higher than below average from three. Randle maybe, but he might just peak at average. So I think it was important getting a guy like Donte DiVincenzo, because now what you can do is always have one of him or Grimes on the floor at all times. Together would even be nice. I know that's very small, but the Knicks are going to be a small team this year regardless of what they do. But it'd be nice to keep one of Donte or Quentin Grimes on the floor at all times for this team because of the weak three-point shooting, excuse me. DiVincenzo comes here as a corner catch-and-shoot specialist. That's perfect for Thibs. That's his niche. Thibs wants the Knicks to shoot corner threes. He's just a guy, he's going to fit very well with the bench because he's versatile. He's interchangeable. He's switchable defensively. He can run the break. he can rebound, and he can run some pick and roll. Those plug-and-play wings get more valuable each year. So I think DiVincenzo's, again, I said this in the preseason, I think he's going to become a fan favorite. And I haven't even touched on his defense. We talked about that a few episodes ago. Very similar to Josh Hart, the effort he puts in on his intangibles. But yeah, it's offensively for me. I just want to see the Knicks shake it up a little bit. Try to get a little faster. Try to move it around a little more. Try to, not saying they have to have a motion offense, but a little more cutting, you know? Because right now it's ISO, some DHO up top, pick and roll. That's really it. There's a lack of off-ball play, lack of ball movement, and weak three-point shooting. And I don't know how much longer they can get away with that. That's not guaranteed to produce. It's not like just because it happened last year where they scored a bunch of points that it's guaranteed to happen again this year. Because what if defenses, like they did in the playoffs, adjust? Speaking of shooting and Quentin Grimes, he's an important piece because it's all about finding a rhythm for Quentin Grimes. That's the whole storyline lately with him is Knicks fans saw him working with JJ Redick, and we're hoping that Thibs can kind of involve him in half-court offense a little more. How do we find him a rhythm? It's got to stay aggressive. So a lot of it's on him. You know, we know he likes to attack closeouts off the dribble. He moves very quickly. You know, he sees a closeout coming. He puts the ball on the floor and he attacks. Sometimes I feel like he should just shoot it because he's also got a super quick release. He's got a textbook release. Of course, we want Thibodeau to just run him through offensive sets. You know? Run him through offensive sets. Get him coming off pin downs. Get him flash in the middle. Let's see some V cuts, L cuts. I don't need him to be Reggie Miller. I just need him to be involved a little bit. And then, you know, we've talked about staggering Grimes' minutes away from Brunson, RJ, and Randle. That might help. But we also have to be honest with ourselves, and you know who's coaching this team, and there's a chance we don't really see any of that, right? Like the Knicks prioritize their three top guys. Brunson will get his, Randle will get his, and RJ is going to get his. He's the number 3 pick of the draft. I wish Grimes would be higher in the pecking order than him, but that's not how the Knicks see it, and some part of me understands that. So Grimes might just be used the way he's been used. Not going to get a ton of shots, but he does need to get more than 3-4 shots, which he does often not get, and it's very frustrating. But I still think, he scored 11, I think, points a game last year. I'm hoping there's room for more. I'm hoping they find him a little more. He's a guy who's got potential, who's got the upside to be a 40% or higher three-point shooter. Knock down 2, 3, sometimes 4 a night. Maybe with him, it's about efficiency instead of volume. You know? And he comes in, knocks down some threes, and he takes on the task of guarding the toughest wing on the other side of the floor. That's a difficult job as a 3-and-D wing to do. So he might not be Allen Houston, but could he be like a JJ Redick, but with defense? JJ was a guy who averaged 13 points per game in his career, but he gets a ton of positive recognition. Because he had seasons where he shot 48% from 3. If Grimes can be a JJ Redick type of wing, I'm taking that. You know, I don't need him to drop 18 to 20. You know, a lot of Knicks fans think he can do that. Maybe he can, but if we just feature him in offense a little bit more than we do, I still think he can give you 13 to 15. But it's going to be difficult because there's going to be a lot of lineup shuffling, staggering between, all these log jams we've got. Who runs with the starters, who runs with the bench the most. It's because, again, Grimes playing alongside the bench, it allows him more offensive freedom. But what about RJ? We know how that works for RJ. He ran with the bench mostly last year, especially in the second half, and he plays much better, and he plays much faster when he's with the bench, because when he's with a starter, he's settling into the half court where he's not that great at. So I think it's also important to stagger RJ away from Brunson and Randle. It allows him more freedom offensively. And it's also less of an issue defensively. The defense might be better off that way. And then I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, well, does Randle see more time with the bench unit? Because without Obi Toppin at power forward this year, and with Dante DiVincenzo in, you're swapping out a bigger wing for a smaller wing. If either Grimes or RJ run with the second unit a lot, that means the Knicks are going to run small because Hart is that backup power forward. So you run the risk of being outmatched defensively, out-rebounded, shot over, out-muscled. If you run Randle with the second unit more, maybe that helps Grimes and RJ get theirs without having to stagger them. But also, what if that slows down your bench? Because I don't think you want to take away their best attribute, especially in the second half. The Knicks' second unit, they were great because they played that high-tempo West Coast style of offense. They ran the floor. They ran in transition. They got the boards. They played the passing lanes. Led turnovers into offense. And, we got to keep in mind that we also probably have to stagger Hart and RJ. So if RJ is coming in for the bench, Hart should be checked out. Because the spacing is dreadful. The three-point shooting is not enough on the floor. So if you're running RJ with the bench, maybe that's when Hart comes out of the game. Hart's great at what he does. And what he does is he flies around, runs the fast break, he rebounds, plays good defense. He's a good finisher too. He's just not great in the half court with the starting unit because there's no space to operate with Hart and RJ out there with Julius. There's no spacing. We saw that against the Heat. Thibs took forever to adjust and put Grimes in there. By then it was too late. So he's got a lot to do. And of course, we're all concerned about separating Jericho and Mitch. I don't think any of us want to see that dual big lineup again. For the same reasons, it just clogs up the paint. But we know Thibodeau is going to run some of that at this point. Is going to run that at some point. You just know it. He likes to double down on defense. But yeah, I mean, there's a logjam. At guard, there's a logjam at wing. RJ is on a new deal. He's going to play his 30 minutes. DiVincenzo was just signed on a pretty pricey deal for a role player. He's going to play minutes. Hart's on a brand new deal. He's going to play minutes. Grimes is a staple at the 2. Quickley is here for the meantime, at least. He's going to play. So, and we'll talk about him. Tom Thibodeau is, as we've said before, he's going to take plenty of heat after every single loss because a different one of those guys will be playing lesser minutes than the others every night. It's going to be one guy as the odd man out, sometimes a different guy every single night. It's going to be somebody not getting enough share. Sometimes it'll be a fair criticism, sometimes it won't be. And it's a good problem to have because you can base this off matchups with that depth, off the hot hand. You can close with whoever you need for that time. We need some defense, you plug in this guy. Need shooting, plug in Grimes. Need rebounding, let's get Hart in there. Different situations calls for different lineups. I also didn't even mention Evan Fournier, by the way. He's still here. Fournier had himself a good preseason, but last year Thibs for, I would say, the first 2 months of the year, November, December, and sometime in December, he cut it down to 9. But last year, he started off running a 10-man. Maybe he does that and Evans the 10th guy. I would rather see, when we're talking about the guard rotation, Deuce McBride get minutes over Fournier. I prioritize defense over offense any day of the week with this current team. It's just way too much of a risk for the Knicks, who are already bad on the perimeter defensively, to be playing Evan Fournier and expecting him to get stops in the point of attack. So while he does bring three-point shooting, which we desperately need, I still rather the Knicks be better defensively than improve their shooting, because their defense is so bad that you add an incredibly terrible defensive guard. It could get ugly, because they're going to score points regardless of how bad they shoot. They're going to score some points. They have a good offense. You can't say they're going to play good defense, because that's an area where they've been trending down every year. And so I would rather Deuce McBride, if we do run 10, 11 guys to start the year, get that spot in the guard rotation. Sims will probably be in there as one of those 10, 11 guys. But going back to RJ Barrett, I know he's got flaws. I know a lot of us don't like him, and then a lot of us do like him. He's a very polarizing player. But he's here right now. He's here until he's not here. You're not trading him at this point. People just say, trade RJ. You got to trade RJ. It's October 25th. Okay? The Knicks are not trading RJ Barrett on opening night. So we just have to accept that he's here at the moment. I liked what I saw from RJ in the playoffs last year. I liked what I saw from him during the FIBA World Cup tournament. And if you care, he had some nice preseason games too. What I liked, though, was seeing more control on his drives. He seemed to make better reads on his drives. He was getting to the line. He looks a lot quicker, but he was getting to the line and he was making the correct pass to the open shooter weak side. I hope that continues. We'll see. This is RJ Barrett. We know he gets off to incredibly slow starts for the first month, finds a rhythm, has some ups and downs. But I do wonder that if he can get off to a good start this year, if that helps him. Because I wonder if, let me rephrase that. I wonder if it will help him get off to a good start, knowing his role entering this season. Because RJ Barrett, every year of his career so far, has kind of entered this season not exactly knowing if he's going to be the number 1 option, the number 2 option, the number 3 option. Before Brunson was here, Randle was here, and there were conversations, should RJ be the number 1? Will Randle be the number 1? Last season, Brunson comes in, and there was question of, all right, is RJ going to be 2? Is he going to be 3? Is he going to be 4? We found out he was the 3rd option. This year, we know, bringing back the same exact roster, sans Dante, that he's going to be the 3rd option again. We know this. So if he knows that, I think, I hope that can help him find some consistency early on and not get off to such a slow start that he gets off to a lot of the time. And how can we get the most of RJ knowing this? I still think you play him a lot with the bench. I think he's the guy you got to play with the bench a lot. I like the lineups featuring Quickley, Dante, RJ, Hartenstein. That's a 4-man lineup that I would love to see surrounding RJ, because you're surrounding him with spacing, shooting, passing, some pace, and most importantly, you're surrounding him with defense. Those are things that RJ lacks, so you put that around him, and it might benefit him like we saw last season when he played with the bench. Great with Hartenstein, great with Quickley. I hope he worked on his shooting form a little more with Drew. I was listening to a podcast or reading an article, I don't remember, but they were talking about how RJ has a tendency to dip down a lot when he catches the ball, which just only slows up, it slows him down when he's releasing the ball. If he catches it high at his chest, it's going to help with his release. He'll beat that closeout. I don't think he's ever going to be a 40% shooter again like he was in the fake COVID year, but if he works on his shot mechanics, there's maybe a shot that we see him at league average from 3-point land again. 35% or so. But it just needs to be catch and shoot threes from the wings. That's his forte. He's good on the wings, catching and shooting. I would like to see him take less of those. I still think he takes a little too much. I don't need more than 3-point attempts on average from RJ. I need him going downhill. I would like to see him cutting backdoor and Isaiah Hartenstein finding him more. I don't need him doing that. I need him running the court, the full court transition game. That's the RJ I want to see. I don't need to see him taking 8 threes a night, going 2 for 8, 1 for 8, 1 for 7. I don't need that. I just need him knocking down the open ones, the timely ones. 1 a night. Sometimes knocks down a couple, but don't take a lot. Just take 3. Take it when you're open. Take it in good moments of the game, within the flow of the offense. I want to talk a little more about the Knicks when we return. I want to talk defensively when it comes to this team as soon as we get back from break. Stay with us here on BD4. We'll be right back.
Bing bang.
We appreciate you sticking around and listening so far. When you have a chance, be sure to open YouTube to subscribe, like, and comment. And if you're already watching on YouTube, be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. We appreciate your feedback and are always looking to improve. Now, with that all said, let's get you back to the show. You can also find us on social media. If you'd like, you can follow BD4 on Facebook, and we're at BD4Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. We appreciate you helping us grow more and more every day. Let's get back to it.
All right, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. Listen, the offense, I believe, will be enough to put up numbers in the regular season. I'm still concerned about the Knicks defense because the Knicks defense last year, they were very good at protecting the paint and rebounding, but they were very bad at defending the 3-point line. They allowed the 5th most attempts last year from behind the arc. Their scheme is obviously to protect the paint, right? Protect the inside, cheat 3 steps in, 1 foot in the paint, close out hard. That's their plan of attack. I worry about that a ton here in the year 2023, especially with teams like Boston adding what they did this offseason. Milwaukee adding a shooter with range like Dame. Even Philly can shoot. But they're kind of a mess right now. We'll see what happens there. It's concerning in the modern era to see the Knicks defend the way they do. Playing in drop coverage as often as they do gets me a little scared at times. It's a little iffy. Sometimes, switching in drop gets tricky for the Knicks. Mitch and the bigs will sometimes assume the role, make the wrong read in pick and pop, and they leave their guy wide up top. We saw that so many times last year. We saw it in the preseason again, versus Boston the second time around with KP going off. We saw that against Muscala the next game. We saw it a ton last year whenever the Knicks defense matched up against offenses who had stretch 5s. They ran 5 out. The Knicks just overly reliant on the help in drop, but when the drop isn't there, like when you're playing against a spread offense, the lanes become open. Then Mitch has to leave his man, and now Mitch, his stretch 5 is wide open, right? there's a lot of helping going on, a lot of over helping in the lanes, and that concerns me. Randle, he gets very, very lazy in drop coverage, and that's scary. I think it's going to be super key this year finding Randle a consistent role defensively. Because too many times last year, we had no clue what he was doing in pick and roll. We didn't know if he was going to drop, switch, blitz, show, etc. I think Randle needs a pattern to do one thing. I think that would help him. I think that requires less mental capacity. Just keep your mind straight on one plan. Like with Mitchell Robinson, that's an automatic drop. We know that. Mitch has the length and mobility to where he can play drop because he can recover in time. So Mitch drops. Randle, we don't know what he's doing, and I think that's why he gets lazy at times. So it's a little terrifying. The 3-point defense is I think the best word for me is terrifying. I'm a little scared to see what the floor is for them defensively. Their size is not great, obviously, either. They're small at point guard. There's only one true wing on the team, and that's RJ Barrett. Every other wing is a smaller wing. Grimes, Hart, Dante. And Hart's going to be playing up at power forward because the Knicks lack size and depth there. And I don't know, man. I'm worried about them getting pushed off their spots, getting shot over, out-rebounded in certain games. They better hope Randle stays healthy, which is why a lot of the time I say he's extremely important, because there's no depth at that position like there is at least at point guard. And listen, I criticize Randle, but he's a great player. He's going to be him. Let's get that out of the way. Like Randle, he's going to give the Knicks offense. He's going to give them rebounding. He will give them some playmaking. We know what Randle does well. When he's inside the arc, he's going to attack closeouts aggressively, throw it down. You know, he flashed a ton of athleticism last year. He looks in tremendous shape. The ankle looks good. Outside the arc, he's going to catch and shoot from the wings. He likes the step backs, likes that follow-away jumper in the corner. Goes to that a lot. Some bailout shots. You know, the Knicks, they want Randle taking threes. That's why he took tons of them last year. He went from 5.4 three-point attempts in 2022 to 8.3 last year. He went from 4.2 mid-range to 2.6 attempts last year. He worked on taking smarter mid-range shots too, which helped lead to his efficiency increase. Right? He's eliminating those long contested twos, which is the most inefficient shot in modern basketball. I would like for Randle to play, again, more of an off-ball role. Absolutely, I would. Get him going downhill and pick and roll. He would be excellent as a screener. He was used that way when he was with the Lakers. But I think at this point, Julius is who he is. And do we really want to risk having him readjusting his game again? Because we're not exactly in a spot where the Knicks are guaranteed to win in the regular season. They're not, as my doorbell rings, they're not in that spot yet. So I say just let Julius do his thing. He'll help the team win games at the end of the day in the regular season. My hope is just that by the time the playoffs come around, he can figure it out. You know, last year I understand he wasn't healthy. But if we're lucky enough to make it again this year, and it's the same result, where Randle's not producing in the playoffs, that would make 4+ underwhelming playoff rounds in his Knicks career. And at that point, if you're Leon Rose, you got to have yourselves a conversation with the front office about his future, because he's got that player option coming up next season. This postseason, if the Knicks make it, will be a very, very, very important one for Julius. So that's ultimately where I'm going to evaluate Julius Randle. What does he look like in the postseason? So, yeah. it's concerning for me. But he's not a number 2 option. I'm sorry. We still need a superstar here. Giannis officially signed the extension with Milwaukee the other day. How fast that shit changes. He went from, I got to see they want to commit to this. They need to show me a real effort. I want a championship, so I'm not signing an extension in the near future. Right? That was basically what he was saying. That was what he was saying. He went from that to signing a contract where he's going to be getting paid $62 million a year with the Bucks. So, thank Portland for that. Fuck you, Portland. Who's left right after that? Harden. No, thank you. That's toxic. I don't want anything to do with that guy, especially at this point in his career. If Harden forces out, I can't expect Leon to be that dumb. If there's one thing you could say positively about Leon is he's shown competence since being here. He's shown that he doesn't do bad deals. Even his bad deals are relatively bad here, right? It's not the end of the world bad. Paul George, that's a name I've heard. No, thank you. I don't think that does it. He's older. He's banged up a lot. I don't trust him. He's also a tier below what I want at this point. And I don't think that's happening. Luka, I've heard that name. That's more of a fan thing. That's not happening. Cuban would never trade him to the Knicks after all the bullshit going on with Brunson last year. We've obviously talked about Towns plenty. That's a nightmare. The salary is a nightmare. It's a nightmare pairing in the front court. The defense would be horrendous. The space he would take up on the floor. Why waste all of your assets on a non-superstar? It just seems like a redundant piece. Doesn't get you over the hump. Fills up a ton of cap space. It's just he's also not a very durable player. So it's like you worry about the defense if Randle's still around to play with Cat, but you also worry about the Knicks' front court durability if Mitch is around to play with Cat. So that kind of leaves you with a couple names, with 2 guys. And there are 2 names where one of them I see as semi-realistic. The other one I see as being pretty realistic. The semi-realistic one is Joel Embiid. There are a lot of talks about Joel Embiid wanting to play in New York City. Those reports came out. I say so what to that? Because since when do these guys really get exactly what they want? Donovan Mitchell also wanted to play in New York City. They shipped him to Cleveland. Lillard wanted to play in Miami. They just shipped him to Milwaukee. Why would Philadelphia ship Joel Embiid to New York? That doesn't make sense. The Knicks currently have the assets to do it. They certainly do. It was reported yesterday that their offer for Embiid would be Randle, RJ, Mitch, Fournier, and 2 to 3 first-round picks. So they have the assets to get a deal done. But so do a lot of teams who don't play in New York City. They have good offers too. So I don't think that's happening, at least not right now. But the other name that I think is more realistic is Donovan Mitchell. That could still likely happen. I think it's more likely, maybe this is what they use Quickley for, who we'll talk about in 2 seconds. I think it's more likely you see Mitchell here. It's something I'm open to as well. Obviously, it's a very small backcourt with Brunson and Mitchell. My God, that would be a little concerning defensively, you think. But it's a backcourt with unbelievable offensive upside at the same time. And I think you can manage to hide them. It's tough. I don't know. I would still do it. I would still do a deal because they need a superstar. They're running out of time. Got guys coming off the books. It's go time right now. We'll see what happens here with these 2 sides. If they end up talking again, if Mitchell ends up not wanting to sign that extension next summer, and I don't think he will. I don't think he wants to. The Knicks have a real shot at making a play for him. And the NBA is tough, man, because, it's not like it used to be, because a lot of the GMs, a lot of owners, they lock up their guys beforehand. They never really let them have a chance to hit the open market. They throw money at them. They lock them up. Speaking of that, that's going to transition us to our next topic here. The Knicks and Emmanuel Quickley never came to an agreement 2 nights ago before the 6 p.m. deadline to extend him, which means he's, in my opinion, probably done as a Knick. The question from here just being, does he last the full season or does he last a half a season here before he's traded? But regardless, he will officially bet on himself and he's going to enter restricted free agency this summer, so the Knicks can still match any offer. But listen, Quickley is great. I love Quickley. It's unfortunate this never happened. He could start at point guard in a pinch, right? We saw him drop 23 a night when he had to start at the end of the season for Brunson. That was his average, I believe. He could slide over to shooting guard. He's a good combo guard, can play with the bench starters. He just missed out on winning 6th Man of the Year, which you can argue he should have won. I'm not saying he was snubbed. I think Brogdon deserved it, but you can make a case. He was obviously crucial to the Knicks' success last year. So you can understand Quickley's side. He wants to be a starting point guard in this league. He clearly sees value in himself. His camp, the way they see it, hey, he was just runner-up for 6th Man of the Year. He's a former he's a former first-round draft pick. He's got starting point guard potential. Pay up, right? We want to bet on our guy. You saw Devin Vassell get paid. We recently saw Jaden McDaniels get his. Quickley's probably thinking him and his camp, why not us? Why can't we get that for you? On the Knicks side, if you're Leon, you got Brunson at starting point guard. Brunson's going nowhere for you. He's sticking here. He's staying around. That's obvious. And eventually they're going to have to pay Brunson legitimate starting point guard star money. That's next summer when he's due for a raise. Grimes, too, who's also due to get paid. He starts as shooting guard. So do you really want to be paying what could easily be $100 million, let's say $20 to $25 million on your cap every year on a non-starter? That's a lot of money. There's a cap in basketball. There are aprons and penalties you have to pay. And you look at the Knicks side, they did bring in DiVincenzo, a guard, small wing, after losing Obi Toppin, who's a small power forward, more of a bigger wing. So that was no accident. They knew what they were doing there. That was definitely an insurance move to create assets and make Quickley expendable. And again, not extending him, now you don't have to worry about the whole poison pill shit with with his salary and averaging out his current salary and his extension salary. You don't have to worry about that because under the new CBA, it just makes it very difficult. And, the Knicks were willing to trade him last year, if you remember. They were willing to trade him for a first-round pick. So I think he's a dead man walking. I honestly do. If you look at the summer 2024, the point guard market, it's very shallow. And you got teams like San Antonio with a ton of cap space. So it's not like Quickley has to do the Knicks a favor in a sign-in trade. He doesn't have to give them anything. He doesn't owe them shit. So the Knicks are going to have to decide to trade him when his value is at its highest, or if they don't do that, they're going to have to most likely overpay for him. And if you don't want to overpay for him, now you're risking losing him for absolutely nothing. And that is a classic LOL Knicks move. That would look terrible. It would be a PR shitstorm. Talk about guys wanting to come to MSG again. That's going to be gone. I feel like that would create narratives. The Knicks don't take care of their own, etc. It would just be a nightmare. And if you trade him, since he's still on his rookie deal, you probably now have to package in other Knicks, maybe Fournier to match salaries. So not getting this deal done is tough. But I'm still going to try to go into this season with some optimism. I do want to temper my expectations. So if I'm making final predictions here before we wrap up the show, last year they won 47 games, and I think they were the 5th seed. I'm going to say 45 wins in the number 6 seed. All right? Boston and Milwaukee, they will be up there at 1 and 2, whatever order you want. I think Cleveland will continue to be great. They might take a step up and be the number 3 seed this year. Philly might regress, But regardless of the Harden situation, I still think Embiid's going to be there for the time being. So they'll still be anywhere from 4 to 5. I feel like there's going to be, a surprise contender in there this year. I'm going to go out on a limb and give a very hot take and say the Orlando Magic will be that surprise contender. And then I'll go Knicks at 6. It seems like a glass half empty approach, but it could also be seen as a half full approach, because if the Knicks end up doing better than that, well, then I feel good. But true success obviously is going to come in the playoffs. I would love to see them make the third round, but something like last year would not be the worst in the world again, because you're bringing back a very, very, very similar roster. You know, it's really about the vibes you leave the season with, though. I heard somebody say that on a podcast, or it was like the New York Post show with Macri and CP yesterday. I think it was Macri saying how it's about like the energy you leave the season with. It's the feeling you get after your season's over that really tells you, was this a positive year? And I really agree with that. But yeah, I think second round, win a couple games in the second round. I think that's fair. But yeah, until they get their final piece of the puzzle, and that's the most difficult part, the Knicks are going to remain in this, good but not great purgatory. I still think there's a positive light shining on them right now, but at some point, the happy to be here stuff has to end, and you got to start talking legitimate business. But that's going to be it for this show. We're going to head to our final break. I'm sorry that we ended up lagging and the frame rate is dog shit, but hopefully it works. Head to our final break. We'll get back, wrap it up with our trivia. Stay with us.
If you have time in the day, or maybe just prefer old-fashioned reading over listening, then you can always follow along and subscribe to BD4 Blog by going to BD4blog.com. We're not on there as often, but when we do post, it's just as entertaining, opinionated, and passionate as we are on this podcast. Thank you so much. And let's keep on with the show.
Studio 69 Productions is a podcast production agency created by Leo Rodriguez to allow content creators to market their podcast. It's an online platform that will market your podcast or any other project that you're working on. Get in touch with Leo Rodriguez from Studio 69 Productions. You can find Studio 69 Productions on Instagram at Studio69NJ. Studio 69 Productions, where dreams are heard and born. All right, welcome back to the show. Let's wrap this up with our trivia real quick. For episode 568, our trivia question. Last season, the Knicks finished with their highest team field goal percentage, 47.0%, since which decade? All right, one final time. Last season, the Knicks finished with their highest team field goal percentage, 47.0%, since which decade? Let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. But for this episode, that will be it. I'm going to wrap this up right now. Try to get this up before the damn game tonight. I'm your host, RJ. Episode 568, BD4 is in the books. I'll see you next time. Later. This episode was brought to you by Anchor.
Hey there! If you stayed the entire way through, we thank you immensely for it. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you come back for the next episode real soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, download these episodes, and share them with your friends as well. BD4 is a 5-star podcast simply because of you, and we'd like to keep it that way. Have a wonderful day. Go Yankees, and go Knicks!